I asked softly. She scowled at me. I owe you no answers. I racked a fresh round into Vigilance's chamber without blinking. I wasn't going to take another chance with a pony capable of smashing any of us into goo. She pressed her lips together, then said slowly, We were scouting a zebra encampment south of Brimstone's Fall. We were ambushed. Wounded. Twist. She blinked in shock. She froze as she stared into my eyes. Is this a dream? I don't know, I replied softly. What about Twist? No, she said sharply as she backed away. She looked around in panic. Twist! Where is she? Twist! She screamed in shock and started to babble in zebra talk. I didn't know if she was going to attack, cry, or run. I sighed as I lined up the gun, jumped into Sats, and shot her with 3 hollow points. Blackjack! Glory said in horror as I waited for Rampage's brain to regenerate. You don't do therapy with bullets, she said sharply, jumping between me and Rampage. You do when you're dealing with a regenerating mare who thinks she's a crazy zebra, I replied, watching carefully as I loaded the fresh magazine into the pistol. But it didn't seem to be necessary. Rampage rose and groaned, clutching her head. Ugh, dear Luna, stop the hammering, she muttered as she blinked up at me in confusion. Where'd the zebras go? How'd we get outside? Then she looked at the flames leaping out of the gutted remains of the museum and gave a half smile. And did I do that? I sighed and holstered Vigilance. Nope, a zebra named Lancer did. She gave a sour frown and rubbed her temples. Good. I'd hate to think that I caused that and missed it. She hissed softly and muttered. Why does my head hurt so bad? I glanced at the others. Their looks ranged from horrified to concerned to shocked to disapproving. You were out again. I had to shoot you. I flushed a little. Repeatedly. Her eyes shot wide. Is Scotch tape all right? She immediately looked around, but sighed and slumped a little in relief as she saw the confused young mare. Rampage, does the name Shuja mean anything to you? Rampage shook her head in confusion. What about Twist? Twist? Rampage frowned. I think... She began, narrowing her eyes as she thought. I watched her eyes as she errantly pulled out a pack of menthols and licked one up. Then she sighed. Sorry. It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure who that is. Right, I said as I scanned the night with my EFS. No red bars. Nothing. So, why did I feel even worse? As much as I wanted to go straight to the Green Line, we had to take a little detour to chapel first. I was blasted and battered, and we were all wet and tired, and it was late afternoon. To be honest, I wanted to go to Star House and sleep in an actual bed. My mood was as lousy as the weather. I kept glancing back towards the burning museum, expecting a silent bullet to come out of nowhere. The Remnant had wanted those space rocks. Glory had had to explain the concept of shooting stars to me. Twice. For some reason. I could have screamed frustration. Why did I have to get hit by every single mystery of the hoof? The Remnant, Thunderhead, Sanguine, EC-1101, Golden Blood. Fucking Golden Blood alone. Who seemed like he'd set all this up 2 centuries ago just to fuck with me. Why does a not smart pony have to figure all this out? I muttered, as we walked through the rain towards chapel. But I knew the answer. As stupid as I was also tenacious enough to keep plodding along. When we reached the grassy slope leading down to the town, I was stunned at the sight of the place. The tiny village had expanded in a very big way. There were 2 wagons loaded up with salvaged lumber, metal sheeting, and other building supplies. While the Crusaders were everywhere, there were at least a dozen more fully grown ponies as well. As I approached, a bony shape appeared in the sky, and Harpka landed before us. "Careful, ma'am and sirs. There's mines buried all around town now," the ghoul Pegasus rasped. Yeah?" Scotch Tape stammered as she waved a hoof at the ghoul. "It's a ghoul, not a zombie," Glory finished firmly. I suppose I couldn't blame the Olivili. After all, I didn't have a clue what ghouls were until I met Harpka and Ditsy-Doo. And Silver Spoon. Harpka led us around the edge of the minefield to the road. An impromptu water tower had been erected with a machine gun mounted on a pivot. It took at least 3 Crusaders in oversized combat helmets to crew the weapon, but it would lay down an effective field of fire, so long as their position wasn't hit by a missile. "You've been busy," I commented to the ghoul Pegasus mare. Scotch Tape looked ready to climb on top of Rampage at the sight of the ghoul foals, chattering politely with the more rough and tumble Crusaders. Harpka nodded. Indeed. It would seem that Blue Blood Manor held items of significant value to the society. They were more generous in exchange for simple trinkets. She then looked at me and added, "However, the Salvengers have not disturbed Mr. Vanity." I smiled, relieved at that. "Welcome back," Priest said as he trotted up the road towards us. "You and your friends are always welcome in chapel," he said to P21. I think the blue pony was more surprised than I was. "Even me?" Rampage asked in worried, looking cute as she fidgeted in her spiked armor. Priest looked at her solemnly for a long moment before he sighed and slowly shook his head. "Right. Sorry. Should have known better." She dropped her eyes. "I'll just go wait up at the Star House." "I'll be there soon, Rampage," I promised. She just gave a sad half-smile before she trotted back the way we'd come. I turned to Priest. "She's gotten better." He looked calmly back at me. "Are you willing to take responsibility if she kills another foal?" I winced at that. I wasn't. Heck, now I knew she also had a zebra inside of her who took poorly to getting shot. Well, honestly, most sane folks did that. He smiled a sad little smile of his before he stepped up to me and pressed his horn to my shoulders. The glow of magic heralded the delicious sensation of healing. I wanted that spell. Why couldn't my horn manage to do more than just go bang? Was that too much to ask? "Are you going straight up to the house as well?" Glory asked as she waited in line for her own healing. We were all battered up. Of course, only Lacuna looked decent. After all, her horn could even conjure a mending spell for her damaged dress. Stupid big-horned alicorns. My horn was plenty good enough. It wasn't little. It was compact. "I need to talk to Sakashi," I said with a little frown. "I think she knows more about the remnant than she let on." Lancer certainly knew and cared for her more than he would than a simple zebra. P21 looked less curious than Glory. "If it's all the same to you, I'll head back to the house. After all, some ponies got to have to pick the lock and let her back in." Priest smiled at the small blue buck. "Actually, I was hoping to talk to you after I was finished healing your friends." That definitely piqued our curiosity, but none more so than P21 himself. In fact, he looked almost wary of the black unicorn, but he nodded anyway. "Well, then I'll see you later, P21, I said, as Priest's healing spell saved us from using our freshest healing potions. Maybe Sakashi would have a fresh batch. I floated out the key to the cottage and passed it to Glory. "Here, you can let every pony charge!" screamed a group of fillies and colts as they raced out of the post office and pony piled on me. "Crusader Collection agents!" shrieked Medley as she leapt atop my back while Allegro and Adigo seized my forehooves. Sonata gave a much more reserved head bump against my flank. "You owe charity for 6 spark batteries and a whole bottle of wild Pegasus. Cough 'em up," Medley declared as I wailed and collapsed beneath the 4, thrusting my pip buck into the air before disappearing from sight. And to think, I once recommended her to Spike to be the element of generosity, I said to myself as I limped towards the house provided to Sakashi and Majina. Sure, I'd taken the 700 caps, but sending young colts and fillies to beat the money out of me? Okay. It'd taken Sonata's big sad eyes looking up at me to make me cough up the money, but still. No cap in the waist on it is safe from her greedy hooves. A little capmonger. There was a little wooden mask on the door, and I felt my insides squirm softly as I knocked. Majina peeked out at the window at me, and a minute later Sakashi opened the door. Ah, greetings, guardian. Come in, come in. I will prepare something fair to eat. I'd love to have some of that cold medicine, too, I said, as I looked at the half-carved masks. She looked back in concern. Is one of your friends ill? No, but that stuff is pretty tasty, I said with a grin. Mix it with sparkle cola and a red scorpion egg, and it's even better. I could see Sakashi wasn't exactly 100% with me on my opinion of what makes a great drink. She moved into the kitchen and began preparing a tray. The deaf zebra handled the knives with skill that a unicorn might envy as she chopped the greens for the salad. We sat at the table, and Majina tucked in with gusto. Where'd you get all this fresh food? The society ponies have been quite thrilled with our wares of late. In one particular was overjoyed at the dresses we collected and as compensation, he compensated us with food and wealth. The finders bring in all sorts of other delectable goods with the building materials. And trade saves the wasteland. The salad might have tasted fine, but it could do with some Radaway to give it a citrusy zing. I ran into an old friend of yours a few hours ago. Quiet buck. Likes to shoot helpless zebras. She touched her puckered scar on her shoulder. Ah, that one. Yeah. And, I said, somewhat hesitantly, after chatting with him, I got to thinking that maybe you weren't being completely honest with me before. Her ears folded back as her eyes turned wary. A zebra like him wouldn't have spent all the time trying to kill 13 zebras just because their tribe mocked the remnant. They'd let the mine break them. Lancer was there to make certain you and the others died. I stretched out a hoof to touch hers. In fact, I think Lancer was there to kill you, specifically. She closed her eyes and sighed softly. You are correct. He was not there to kill the others. He was there to kill me. She opened her sad green eyes and smiled. There is a funny story, I know. Once upon a time, there was a young zebra who was a member of the remnant. She trained in the zenith style of combat, learned her potions and poison, and the art of wind, of infiltration and stealth. She was skilled, and drew the eyes of the leader of the remnant, Veget Vitoisus. He took her on as one of his wives. But one day, she was on a solo mission scouting the lands around the Black City when she fell in a storm. She was wounded and lost, and feral ghouls were closing in. Then she spotted, through the clouds, a single star. She promised anything she could to escape that horrible night, and the star accepted her promise. She sighed softly and bowed her head. But it was also a horrible price, for in her heart doubt was seated. What happened? I asked when our eyes met again. She questioned the goals and the needs of the remnant. What was the purpose of fulfilling the wishes of the Caesar 2 centuries past? Were the stars truly evil? She used her position to learn the lore of the stars, a forbidden subject to all but the most trusted zebras. But eventually the zebra became foolish, and the legate learned of her studies. His rage was profound. She looked at the numerous scars on her hide, and I knew that not all of them had been received in the mine.